Welcome back. This is a very special edition of the Next Room podcast. We're broadcasting live from the Beautiful Dying Expo, and it is wonderful to have you here with us. Um, the stage is set, the candle is lit, the sage is burning. We have got prayers that have been set and sent out to the universe. My guest is a beautiful force of nature, and actually, we're co-hosting this, so not so much my guest, but her name is Joelle Simone Maldonado, and she's known as the Grave Woman. You may have seen her this morning. She started off the expo with a keynote that was just beautiful. Joelle and I met a couple years ago, actually through the Beautiful Dying Expo, and we immediately had what my pastor would call the Holy Spirit tingle, and what she now calls, and I love to loving refer it to as the Grave Woman tingle. We just knew that something was happening. Something very special was about to unfold. And what has happened is a connection. It's deep, it's on a level of knowing, trusting, listening, and seeing one another. And her opening keynote this morning, I mean, she knocked it out of the park because she set the tone for the Beautiful Dying Expo with heart, compassion, sincerity, and authenticity. And it was just brilliant. And it's so fun to have her now on the show with me. So welcome back, Joelle. It's so cool that we're here together.
Hi, Jane. We were talking backstage. So, hello to everyone who's listening and watching with us. Thank you again to Michelle and Kiara and everyone at Hop In for making it possible for us to be here today. Um, like Jane said, we met at the beautiful Dying and Death Expo back in 2020 at the onset of the
Right.
pandemic. And when I heard your voice, I think I've told you this before, you sound and look like Roz Doyle from Frasier. And I fell asleep to that voice in that
Mm,
show for years. And so there was something so familiar about you, not just with that, but just like on a spiritual connection.
mm.
And the day we met, I think we talked about collaborating in some way. And we've hosted each other on our podcast. We remained in contact. We share a zodiac sign. So just thank you for having me and allowing me to hold this space with you.
It's great, isn't it? When you meet someone and you just know that you know them, like you've traveled this lifetime, maybe a different lifetime together, and there's that connection. And so we felt it immediately. And yeah, it's really cool. And we talked immediately about collaborating. And of course, life gets in the way, and you're a newlywed now. So you were off busy, getting married and doing all of that and running your amazing business. So I'm happy to say that we finally got it together, and we'll tell you all about it in a little bit. Um, let's talk about spirit, and let's talk about aligning with spirit and what that means to you, because you're so eloquent when you've told me about it in the past, but this is for a brand new audience today.
So I think aligning, at least my experience has been aligning with spirit, has been having the bravery to be my authentic self. It's been showing up as a vessel, as being open, as seeking guidance, as being directed, and most importantly, being obedient to
Mhm.
that voice that we can't see, that's so still, that's so quiet. And a lot of times when we hear about spirit and we talk about spirit, we apply it immediately to religion. But what spirit represents to me is that part of ourselves that connects us all. And you hear my little baby going crazy in the background. That happens a lot of times when we're talking about, or when I'm talking about spirit, because she feels that connection too. It's the thing in the animals, in nature, in the cosmos, in all of us that just connects us. And we're blessed to experience it from the perspective of the human form, but I don't think that spirit takes only one form. As you know, and as many of you guys watching may know, if you don't, I am from a town called Beaufort, South Carolina, which is the central hub for the Gullah and Geechee culture. And for those of you that don't know what that means, it means that the place where I'm from, the Port Royal Sound, the water, the earth, the land here is where we were bought as enslaved people from our home country. And so that spiritual essence of our identity, of my identity, of so many people's identity in this country, it lives here in this place. And though I grew up in a very Christian household, I've always been taught to honor my ancestors, those that walked this land, that connected with this earth, that were in this space before I got here. I've always been taught to honor that. And that's been one of the deepest connections that I've had to spirit. And with that has come many gifts, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But for me, that's what spirit represents. What about you, Jane?
Boy, I love that. You know, I think you said something about at the very beginning about getting quiet and, you know, tuning in and listening. And that is what it is. And I was raised in a really small little farm town, super Christian. You know, I always make a joke about Deckerville, Michigan. It was, 800 people, 5,000 cows, 25 churches, 2 bars, and 1 blinking stoplight right at the corner of Black River and Deckerville Road. And, you know, it was such a spiritually strong community. And what's interesting is that it is so much bigger than I think people they get freaked out when they think, "Oh, spirit, oh, I have to be religious." And I think maybe that's what's happened is that um, the spirit has been compromised a little bit about some of the old button down attitudes. And it scared some people away. And I like to open up the door and just say, it is everywhere. It is within all of us. It runs through our ancestors. It runs through our animals. It runs through, our feet as we touch the soil into the ground and the trees. And it's just everything. It is bigger. It's bigger than anything that you can possibly even fathom because it's a feeling and it just is through everything that we experience. So that's what spirit is to me. And I'm happy to say that even being from a very, small, very Midwest, very Christian town, that I have been fully embraced and wrapped in this communal little embrace of love from this town and have not been judged at my different type of thought because I've pushed the boundaries with the Next Room podcast and with my book and my belief in being able to hear and receive messages from those that have gone before us. I was very worried about being ostracized or chastised or, I love what you said earlier during your keynote about, stop shoulding on yourself, I was worried about that. But I have to say that once I got out of my own way and I allowed myself to just be and honored who I am and why I am here, my greater purpose, everything is okay. And if somebody doesn't get it, that's okay. They can move on down the road and find something else that they get because I'm not going to change. You can't put me back in a box now. I've broken free. So, and I believe that spirit had me do that. So long-winded, but that's kind of how I feel about spirit and what it means.
I love what you said about your fear of being ostracized because for a long time, even though it is so deeply just enthralled in my culture to connect with spirit and connect with ancestors and literally talk to the dead. That's what it is. Just to say it frankly.
Mm-hmm.
I had so much fear, Jane.
Mm.
I think this may be the first public platform where I'm saying I can communicate with the dead.
Yeah,
and
you can.
I'm a funeral director. I'm a mortician. I'm a sacred grief practitioner. Why would this not be a part of what I do? Why do these things live differently in my mind? And when you said what you said about that fear of being ostracized or that fear of what are people going to think or that shoulding on myself. That's what it is. It's rooted in that. And as you said, open up and get out of that box, I'm realizing that we all have that gift. It's not something that's unique to me or you or anyone. It's a muscle. It has to be developed. It has to be honed. There's work that comes along with it. There's a level of protection, spiritual protection, that is required in order to do so, for lack of a better word, safely. But I think there's also been a level of fear of, once I open this door to the next room, so to speak, what's going to come out of the other side? And do I have control over what's going to come out of the other side? And the thing that I keep finding is more and more light shining through. It's not what we see in movies and what we've been taught in church about, you know, negativity and negative energy. If that's where you're vibrating, of course, that's what's as above, so below. That's what you're going to attract to yourself. But when you approach something so sacred and something so important from a place of light and love and authenticity and compassion, only good things can come to you when doing that.
That was beautiful. And that's exactly how I feel. I feel that there's just love and its source and its comfort. And you are right. You need to open up. But there is a level of, if you are expecting something to be of a negative nature, you will open up and attract that. And so I think that's why, I literally start every session that I do with writing or prior to a podcast coming on here tonight. I open up my heart and my arms and I'm looking up, I have all these pictures of my loved ones that have gone before me, and I speak to each and every one of them. And I say, okay, here we go, Mom, Dad, Lynn, Budge, Dick Kernan. We're going to do some clear and concise communication, and please speak through me. And if there is a message that you have for me that I need to deliver for someone that needs to hear what I have to say, may I say it so that it's received in the light and love that it's delivered. And so I bring that, I open up to that with love, only love, every single day, whether I'm doing a mindful smell with my puppy through the neighborhood, or whether I'm sitting alone here in my little studio, or whether I'm in my reading chair, getting ready to read my spiritual material for the day. I open up and I ask for the goodness of the planet, the goodness of my neighbors, the goodness of my friendships, all of it. It's become a mantra to live in a space of gratitude with the first thought, if I am so fortunate to open my eyes in the morning, wow, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And that's how I start my day. So I do believe we need to ask, but we need to be very specific about what is it that you're asking for. And for me, it is all about love. It is all about keeping me centered in a space of compassion and love so that I can use my purpose, whatever that looks like, to help another human being. And I truly believe that's why I'm here. And I think it took me a long time to get here because, we have these little detours in life, and I was a DJ and playing music, and I'm sitting alone in a studio, in my, late 40s. And I'm like, what am I doing? I'm throwing down Pink songs. Not that I don't love Pink as an artist, but it wasn't fulfilling me in my heart. And I knew that there was something grander and bigger that I was here to do. Not that I'm any kind of, natural healer or anything, but I feel like I was put here to express myself and maybe pave a path for other people to open up to receive what I've been learning. And it's pretty darn cool. It's really fun once you open up, and you're so much younger than me. I am so impressed that you are willing to go on this journey at your age. It took me a long time. I mean, it took me a long time to finally go, huh, look what I created. Okay, I like this Jane, and this Jane is 61 years old. So, yeah, I think we need to be open and be very clear about what it is that our purpose is and what we're asking for.
I agree 100%, Jane. And I accept and I receive your compliment about my willingness to be open. But I have to say, working in the death care industry, particularly working with the deceased, even before I became a licensed mortician, being a little girl and having so many experiences in my community, sitting with people who were transitioning through the work my mother and my grandmothers and aunts were doing through the missionary society, I saw very early on that life, I hate this phrase, but I don't want to say hate. I truly dislike this phrase because I believe that God is intentional in all he does, but life is short compared to forever. And
Mm.
I talked this morning about obedience. That's something that's been instilled in me from a child. And part of this openness is, again, that obedience to spirit, to like turn your head just a little and look this way, or listen to this means something. And having the perspective of seeing life and the work that I do from the end backwards, it just, how could I not? How could I not be obedient to that calling? I have a question for you, and you're going to see me looking down at my phone because I want to find a photo to show when I answer the question. But when was the first time you realized that you could communicate with those that had passed on?
Mm. I have to say, I think it was pretty young. I was one of those really curious kids, and my mother fed my passion for reading. And I would try to do things with my mind. I was always doing bizarre things, like I would walk around the house holding a silver tray, looking down at the tray, so it would appear that I was walking on the ceiling. And I don't know. I was always very curious, and I think after my Aunt Mabel, who was kind of like my grandmothers both died. One was deceased before I was even born. The other one only held me when I was christened, and then she died. So the only grandmother figure I had was my Aunt Mabel, and she crossed over. I think I was about 13, and it really knocked me for a loop. And I thought, I wonder if Aunt Mabel is able to hear me. And I started communicating with her back in the day. Um, and then it just sort of became a thing when anybody passed on or crossed over in my life. I made a practice of speaking to them. I light candles and I just have a conversation. And then it became more so, obviously, when my mother crossed 12 years ago. I mean, it was daily. I mean, I would come out every morning, light a candle. I have this little picture of her in the kitchen, and I'd say, "Good morning, mommy." And I would just chat with her. Um, so it kind of started at a very young age, and then it progressed and progressed and progressed to where now I don't think it's odd at all, but I have daily conversations with a multitude of those that have gone to the next room, and many of which I don't really know personally, or at least did not know on this side. So I speak to my grandmothers. The one that I never met, she was an egg farmer, and so she was really great in the kitchen. And I could not make an over easy egg to save my life. And then finally, one day, I'm like, "Yeah, I should ask Grandma Emma if she would help me." Boom, perfect eggs. So it's the little things like that, if I've gotta fix something, my dad was an electrician, I'll say, "Okay, Dad, I really need your help on this," and he helps me. So, great question. When did you first realize that you could commune with those that have gone before you?
So mine is a little bit different, Jane. And I don't really know how to articulate it. So I wanted to find this picture.
Okay,
And I can you see that?
let me see. Yes, I can.
So I drew
Is
this
this you?
picture. I assume I drew this picture when I was 8 years old. And my grandmother saved it because she said there's something about this that is very, I need to save this. You need to see this
Oh,
later.
yeah. Oh,
She
you
was
need
obedient to that.
that
And
is
so
awesome.
she put it in a book that she made me when I graduated high school and was on my way to college. And I forgot about it. I didn't even see it, to be honest with you. And my sister, fast forward a few years, I graduated college and I decided to go to mortuary school. And things were getting very stressful during mortuary school. I was having panic attacks. I was being faced with mortality in a way that I had never been before. And just the pressure of the studies was getting to me. And my sister was at my apartment going through this book that my grandmother had given me. And she said, "Didn't you just create a blog called The Grave Woman?" And I said, "Yeah." And this photo that I drew when I was 8 years old says, "I am the grave woman." And I don't know if you can see the background, but that's a grave in the back.
That's
That's
so cool.
a cemetery, and I'm in the cemetery, and it says, "I am the grave woman," with a microphone. And if you notice, the lips are red, which is my signature lip color. I did something a little bit different this morning that felt awkward, but I have that signature red lip there. And it hit me that my whole entire life I'd been talking to the dead, and it was so natural for me that I
Mm.
didn't even realize I was doing it. But
Hmm.
when I saw this picture, it all just came rushing back to me. And that's when I got or became intentional about it. So I started having conversations with my grandfather, who was an educator, college professor. And I said, "Granddaddy, I'm really struggling with these courses, and I'm struggling with the stress of school, which had never happened to me before. I always been a great student. I'm so passionate about funeral service. I don't know what's missing here." And all of a sudden, got better. So
All of a
my
s all
grandfather
of a
helped
sudden
me graduate.
all of a sudden what?
School
I'm
got
sorry, you
better.
said school got better. I missed that. Wow.
School
I
got
love it.
better. Things got easier.
Mm,
I think I lagged a little bit. My apologies. Am I back on track?
that's okay. Yeah, you're back on track. I just didn't
Okay.
wanna miss that. I
So
love that.
school got better. It
Hmm.
got easier to study. So I was tapping into that connection that I had with my grandfather. Shortly after that, doing my apprenticeships and struggling with anatomy and embalming, my uncle passed away shortly before I graduated mortuary school. Um, well, actually, after I graduated mortuary school, my apologies. And during my apprenticeship, I was able to lean on him and have conversations with him in the embalming room about working on the deceased. He was a
Wow.
master embalmer. All of a sudden,
Wow.
it was almost like his gift would come through me.
Mm.
And
Oh,
I,
that's
it,
good.
yeah. And then just being around people who are having extreme grief and knowing the right words to say that I didn't know I knew, that I can't even
Mm.
take credit for. That's their loved one speaking through me. So it's not so much for me, I'm going to sit down and tap into this energy like a medium would do. But
Mhm.
it's almost like when I'm open, when I'm in that place of love and compassion, they just naturally flow through me. And I remember I said it this morning. My grandma tells me all the time. I remember you used to tell me, "I'm going to travel the world and talk to the dead people." And that doesn't mean for me sitting down and intentionally telling you what your loved one says, but talking to you through them.
Mhm. Mm. You know, I really felt that this morning when I was watching you, and by the way, I love the purple vibe you had on your lips this
Oh,
morning.
thank
It
you.
looked great. I was, like,
Thank
admiring it. I'm like, "I wish I could branch out and wear some purple." Um, you it's so abundantly clear to me that you are, for lack of a better term, it's like you are an open channel because you speak with just such a gentle love and knowing, and it's flowing through you, and you can I mean, it's mesmerizing. You are really, really something to behold and to be around and be in that same space because it is so, so sincere. Um, you really you really do have that gift, and And I love that you are opening up to receive from your ancestors. I mean, it's just so beautiful. It's like this generational gifts. It's like the gifts they leave behind, right? And we don't just go through this life experience and we think, here we are, oh, I owe, off to work I go, and I got to pay my bills, and I got to do this, got to do that. If we just slow down and breathe and reconnect with all of it, there's just dimensions of this love that has come before us and will continue to go after us. There's so much to tap into if we'll only receive it, and believe it once we receive it, and ask for it before we receive it. So it's really, I like that word, intentional.
Yeah. And it's like, it's also for me, recognizing that it doesn't come the same way all the time.
Good point.
There's so, like I said earlier, when you asked me that wonderful question about spirit, right? Spirit is limitless. And our ancestors and those who have gone over and crossed it over into the next room, they're no longer limited by their physical form, which means that they're truly one with spirit and God. That's my personal belief. Not that they're the same as God. I don't want to confuse that, but they are totally one with God. So that means they could be used as anything to connect with us. It could be, I remember one of the first ways when I became intentional that my guides, my ancestors, my higher divine beings would talk to me was through soap bubbles on the shower curtain in the bathroom. It was the weirdest thing.
What? Okay, wait a minute.
Yes.
What? How old? And how does this happen? This is great.
I think 20 something.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Soap
20
bubbles.
something. Yeah. And this is when I became intentional about it.
Okay.
Um,
Interesting.
so, and it still happens to this day. It may
love it.
be a letter, or it may be an animal shape, or it could be an animal that passes by. A few weeks ago, I was very, very nervous about some speaking engagements that I had. And for 3 weeks straight, I would go out in the morning, at least 2 days out of the week, and a peacock would be walking across our yard. A random peacock, a blue, beautiful blue and white peacock. And I looked up the meaning. I have my books here, my resources that I lean on, looked it up online. And in each and every one of those books and passages that I found, the message was clear. Be yourself. Be your unique self. Show up authentically. And little did I know that was the seed for the keynote this morning, because that was the message that my guides were giving me, to go out into the world and just be myself, put that fear aside. So it comes in so many different forms. It comes as warnings, dreams. I've had dreams nights before things happen, not that change the course of what's going to happen, but that just prepare me for those things. So I think it's important that when we say we communicate with those who have crossed over, it's not always auditory. It's not always clairvoyant. It's not always a dream. It takes so many different forms because they're not limited to one form. But the key, again, like you're saying, that stillness, and you have to believe all of these things could be happening. And I'm thinking of another picture again that I want to show. But I'd like to know how do they communicate with you other than just that inner knowing?
Boy, well, so many different ways. So many things have happened throughout my lifetime, but I had one very physical, transformative experience where shortly after my mother crossed, I went home to see my dad, flew back to Northern Michigan. I was with my big sister, and we were hanging out at the house, and she was with my dad and his buddy Bob in the living room, and I was out in the kitchen with my mom's best friend, Ruth. And so Ruth and I were having a conversation, and we were leaning across the kitchen, like there's an island, and we were kind of leaning and holding hands. And I was looking directly in her eyes, and she has these beautiful hazel eyes. And my mom's eyes were like the color of a Michigan spring day, like clear blue. And I'm holding Ruthie's hands and I'm just saying, "Oh, Ruth, mom really loved you and thank you so much for being here for me." And because she really showed up through my mother's whole ordeal. And all of a sudden, through Ruth's eyes, there was this literally a vibrational blue light started pulsating through her hazel eyes, and it was blue, and it was like voo, voo, voo. And I'm holding on to Ruth's hands and I'm looking at it and I had no fear. I knew exactly what was going on. And then finally I said, "Ruthie, you don't have blue eyes." She dropped my hands and she spun around. She's like, "Jane, it's your mom. You're freaking me out." And I said, "It's okay, it's okay. That's the coolest metaphysical thing I have ever seen." And in that moment, and I wrote about it, in that moment, I knew that my mother was saying to me, "I can see you, Janie. I just have to use my best friend's eyes to deliver the message." So I had that, and that's only happened once. Shortly after she left, I started finding dimes everywhere. That's a whole story, and I wrote a whole chapter on that. I mean, everywhere and in bizarre, random places. Um, just crazy. And now it's progressed because I do believe that, I'm practicing with that communication and communing with those souls that have gone before me. So now um, I hear her very clearly. And now my dad is really starting to pipe in because he's been there for a while now. Like I feel he was an old Navy guy, and happy Veterans Day to you, Dad. World War II vet. But I feel like he had to get his sea legs right, and now I feel like he's just all over the place. He makes me laugh almost every day. My dad loved to tell a story. He was bigger than life, just this big ox of a man, but just a pussycat and a soft heart. And so now I'm actually hearing them. And my sister Lynn will bust in. Usually with Lynn, it's advice, because she was my big sister and took no prisoners and just, a force of nature. And I'll be wondering about something or I'll be upset about something. And all of a sudden, it's like lightning bolt. And Lynn will go, boom, 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 boom. And I'll go, "Oh, that's a great idea, Lynn. Thank you." She will just kind of like set my ship straight, so to speak. So now it's progressing, and people are saying, "Oh, will you do readings for me?" And I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. I'm not a medium. I'm not hanging out a shingle. I'm not saying that I can do that. I'm just saying that I can clearly communicate with my loved ones, and I can maybe guide you on what I do and maybe show you what I do so that maybe you can practice it as well." That's all I can do. I'm not about to be a medium because I don't feel that that's my purpose. I'm really happy with my podcast and with being an author and writing. So I'm going to stay in that lane. So how about you? What kind of signs are you getting? Are you getting more signs every
Oh,
day?
oh gosh, Jane. I mean, the bubbles, the animals. Back in September, I'd taken my grandmother to Alabama for a wedding. Her sister's granddaughter got married, and she had made a very big point of coming to my wedding in February. And she wanted my grandmother at this wedding so dearly. And we decided that the whole family was going to go, my husband, my sister, my mom, my grandma. So we piled in a van and drove to Alabama from South Carolina, which was a beautiful trip. And on the way back, Jane, we saw double rainbows at least 3 times and crossed under them. Not only did we see them, we saw them from one end to the other. We saw both sides of the rainbow. And I knew with all of my heart that was my uncle and my grandfather saying thank you for making sure that your grandmother got to this wedding, because that's what they would have done. I was looking for a photo I can't find right now, but hopefully I'll be able to locate it before we get off. Um, I was having a horrible day at a job that just wasn't in alignment with who I was, but it was serving a purpose, which was insurance income. and financial stability for the time frame that I was doing my apprenticeship for mortuary science. And I just wanted to give up so badly. I wanted to quit. I had had a horrible day with the person who was managing me. And I walked outside, Jane, and there was a J in the clouds. And that is what my uncle would call me. He's the only person in the world that would ever refer to me as that. And I knew that that was him just saying, keep going. You're
I
so
got
close.
you.
Yeah.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
so many different ways, numbers, animals, dreams, feelings, knowings. And I think what's important to understand and what I had to truly embrace is that having this gift is a gift from God. It is a part of who we all innately are and a part of what we come to this world with in our basket. And it doesn't conflict with any spiritual or religious belief.
No.
And that to me, it gives me the comfort to continue to open up.
No, absolutely. I don't feel there's any conflict at all because it's steeped in love. Again, it's just back to source and back to love. And that
Yes.
is why we are literally these spiritual beings having this human experience. And so if we vibrate love, that's what we're going to bring in. It's what we're going to push out. It's all back to love. Can we just talk about, I just think it's just remarkable that you're a licensed funeral director and a grief practitioner, and you've made a name for yourself being the grave woman. How is it for you in the industry as it is now? And are you making some good trouble in the industry? What are you doing to
Oh my
help,
gosh.
bust out those boundaries a little?
So yes, I'm in a lot of good trouble right now.
Good.
Yes. And I think the thing that's causing that trouble is again trying to get people to allow others to show up authentically. And by that, I'm just going to be very frank, Black and brown people to show up authentically, not only as death care professionals, but as people that have lost those that they love. It disgusts me that in our industry, it's not a part of standard mortuary science education that we're taught to care for anyone other than white bodies in most institutions. And unfortunately, I recently attended the National Funeral Directors Association, which was an amazing experience. I was afforded the opportunity to go through the Funeral Service Foundation, which is an amazing foundation. But I sat in on a meeting with the American Board of Funeral Service Education and told them frankly that your curriculum's failing students and it's failing families because you aren't teaching professionals how to properly give basic care to BIPOC communities, specifically Black communities, and was basically shrugged off and said, well, whatever. Not only that, there's racist language in our textbooks, in our dress codes, and racist actions towards professionals that show up with natural hair like my own, protective styles such as braids and weaves, and even natural hairstyles like locks. And I'm working very hard to do what I can and use my influence to shift that because the professionals desire it, the families need it, but for some reason our education system doesn't value it yet. So along with the collection for, I'm sorry, I'm saying it wrong, with the Radical Death Studies group, we're in communication, or we've had communication with the American Board of Funeral Service Education that has not been fruitful up until this point, but we're not giving up. So to supplement that education, I offer courses that teach people not only about racism and death care, but how to care for our hair, skin, and cosmetic needs, as well as how to tap into the spiritual essence of who we are. Not every family that comes to us is going to be religious or is going to ascribe to being Jewish, Christian, or one of the religions that we're familiar with. For example, my husband, Lawrence, is a Baha'i. I'd never heard of the Baha'i community prior to marrying him, but what I've learned about what's important to them at the end of life is so beautiful. So he inspired me, and his journeys inspired me to create courses that educate us about all practices, all faith-based practices, and those will be launching early next year. So thank you for asking.
I'm just so proud of you. I mean, I follow your journey, and every single time I see you kick down another door, I am rooting for you. And I just want you to know I am here, whatever I can do through my sources to help you bust through some of these issues that you're having. By all means, I back you and will support you through that. And good for you, I mean, it takes courage and bravery to not accept things the way that they are shoved down our throats. And it's like, no, I'm not having it. Let's do it a different way. Let's change the language. It's old. It doesn't apply to everyone on the planet. And so it's really important. So good for you. Stirring up some good trouble, I see.
Yes.
I love
Thank
that.
you, Jane. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. And I feel your support. And
Yeah,
the same with you. I
absolutely.
support you 100% as well.
Well, this is great. I don't know if we're allowed to take questions. If somebody has questions today, we welcomed Q&A, but I don't know how that's all going to work. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you want to talk about?
Definitely. I know that I mentioned it earlier that you and I would be sharing some exciting information. And
Mm-hmm.
is it okay with you if I share?
Yes, please do. Bring it on.
Awesome. So on February 17th of 2023, under and after much prayer and meditation, guidance, and divine timing, Jane and I will be hosting the inaugural session of a workshop we developed entitled Align, which stands for asking, listening, and inviting guidance from the next room. And this workshop on the afterlife is dedicated to honing in and building your unique and authentic connection and enable you to communicate with your loved ones and those that have transitioned and entered the next room before us. So we're very excited about this. Not only that, I just feel like it's so important and so powerful that we've had the opportunity to announce this today, being 11/11. It's a portal, it's wide open, and I just think it's just such perfect timing. It's not something that we planned to do to release today, but the timing was just perfect.
It was divine.
And it was divine. And like Jane mentioned at the beginning of our recording, we met and we knew we were supposed to do something impactful and big. Neither one of us knew what it was, but
No.
this has just come together so beautifully, and it's still coming together so beautifully. So we invite you to enroll. I'm going to give the team on the back end the link for
good.
enrollment. I'll do that right now if they like to share it with participants and make sure that those that have the recording have access to it. It would be great. But we're just so excited to share our experiences, our knowledge, our information, and the guidance that we've received to enable you to develop your own connection with you. We've priced it so that it's extremely accessible to everyone at $44.44, which is an angel number, which represents connection with the divine and ancestors and those that we love that are communicating with us from the next room. And in addition to that, we'll be offering some one-on-one coaching if that's something you're interested in as well. And of course, I mentioned earlier that there's a discount code, BDD 2022, which can be applied to take advantage of the 20% off of the coaching or the course.
Beautiful.
Did I capture everything?
You did. And, I just want to add that, when we did meet and our sparks were like bing, bing, bing. And I don't know, we just knew at some point this was all going to happen. but we didn't know how or when. And so we just allowed it to be what it ended up being. And then when it started to come together, and it just flew. Like, I don't feel any stress over this. Like, you know how sometimes projects feel heavy and it's like, oh, I gotta push that boulder uphill. This was just like, okay, I'm working with the grave woman. Here we go. And it so aligns with, I love aligns. It aligns with where I am, because so many people, I'm going on book tours and I'm speaking at different places, to groups of people, and everybody keeps asking for more. And I'm like,
Mm.
I don't know, I don't know how to do that, or I don't know how to offer more. And then you and I just have this conversation. And it was just like, wah, there it is. So for me, I just have to say a huge thank you, because I don't really know how to pull all this together. And the beauty of it is that you did. And with the two of us together, I kind of feel we're a little bit unstoppable. We're going to have some fun.
Yes.
And I'm excited, because I really feel like I've grown to the point where I've been led so far, with my journey, and with the connections I'm making, and the podcast is growing in leaps and bounds, and the book is selling really well, um, and getting great reviews. And so I feel like I've kind of come to that point where it's like, all right, what's next? I need to be in service with spirit and use all of this knowledge that I've gained over the years, and give back, and kind of like map the way for someone else that wants to connect. And I love to talk about it, man. Afterlife is my jam, or I like to call it other life, because I
Yes.
feel it just continues to go on. Um, Speaking of giving back, though, I just want to do a little plug. I do have my book, which is The Next Room, and Michelle has been so selfless and has busted her hind end putting this beautiful, beautiful Dying Expo together for years now. And it's really hard to get people to, support you. I mean, she does all of this out of the goodness and out of her own pocket. And so right now, through the end of the expo, I've already sold some books for her, but I'd love to give her a bigger chunk of change. So if you do buy a book through Sunday through my website, and I have to be able to ship it to the United States. Sorry about that, but shipping out of country is too expensive for me. But I'll give Michelle 50% of the profits. I mean, she's already got $32 in a Venmo account, so I'd be really happy to add to that. And it's a beautiful book. It's a true story about my connection with my mother, and how it grew from her leaving to where it became to the point where I literally could hear the messages come through. And it's all based in love. So help me help Michelle. And that would really be great, because I'm just a little independent author and podcaster and just doing my part. So I am very grateful if you would do that for us.
Amazing. And I feel led, and so I'm going to be obedient to say that we're not offering relief from grief, or
Oh, no.
we're not offering a cheat code for anything. It takes work, it takes practice. And I just want to be very clear on that, because I've learned that sometimes, especially when people are in the throes of grief and in the heartbreak of grief, they're grasping at straws for anything. And our intention isn't to take advantage of that. We are truly just trying to help you understand that you have this same gift, because it's a gift that, like Jane is saying, we've had to overcome fears to embrace. And we want to just help alleviate that.
Yeah.
I felt led to say that. So I should.
No, I'm really glad you did, because I do want to touch on that. The first year after my mom left, she was the best friend I've ever had and still have. I don't know why, just this indelible bond with this woman who birthed me, and I adore her. And from as a small little girl, I was always very protective over her. And I know why now, But that first year, I was swimming in such deep grief that I really don't remember anything. I don't remember much of anything. I know I was kind of on autopilot and I was sobbing a lot and journaling a lot and I was just a mess. So I couldn't have done anything like take a course or try to learn how to connect. I would encourage you, you know, I like what Dr. Ben said earlier. He just said, you have to kind of work through your grief. It doesn't go away. You just learn how to work with it and to kind of, for me, it became kind of a comfortable old shoe that I wear every day. It's with me. Some days I get hit harder than others. And the last thing we would ever do is take advantage of anyone in a deep grief. I think this is more of a course for someone that has been on their path and maybe you've received a sign, but you're like, I don't know, is that really a sign? And you're a little bit skeptical. We can kind of lay it out for you and show you that it is about asking. And then when you do receive, it is about believing. And then going from there and kind of like really opening up to receive more of it. So, anyway, just a little thing about grief, because I don't think I could have ever done anything for the first year after my mom left. I wouldn't have remembered anything, I could barely like eat. So, and I know that that's a lot of people go through heavy, heavy grief through their loss. But if you are kind of starting to come up for air and you're like, I'm curious, what are they talking about? I don't know. Because it is really fun when you finally do start receiving messages. And I will add that the other way that I get a lot of great messages is through music. Um,
Mm.
I have literally been here in the studio writing on my laptop, pecking away, and I'll be asking a question and my music will switch over to a different song that I need to hear
Mm.
from the person that I'm thinking about or that I was just writing a chapter about. And uh, I mean, it's astonishing. I've got several stories about electronics and about songs and music. And every time it happens, my dad was an electrician by trade. And he loved his music. He's a little trickster. He'll mess with my music a lot. And it's the best. It's like, and every time it happens, I'm like, okay, Dad, how you doing? I hear you. You're right there. So that's another great way for our loved ones to reach out.
Yeah, and I love what you said about not being in that space to even absorb any of this, right, during the grief. But something that I've found, particularly with my uncle, I've been very transparent about the fact that he practically drank himself to death,
Mm,
which was heartbreaking because for a while I had a lot of anger towards him because I felt like he chose that over
mm,
our family, which to me was a betrayal. That's
yeah.
how I interpreted it. But the connections and the conversations and the messages and just the ability to listen and believe, like you said, what I've experienced through connecting with him and aligning with him. It's been so healing, not just for me, because I've been able to give those messages to my mom, to my grandma, her son. Like I've been able to tell her things that there's no way I should know.
Hmm,
And my grandma, she has a very unique eye. I don't want to call it a disease, but it's something with her eye. She can't cry.
hmm,
And one of the most heartbreaking things that I've ever heard her say was she said it to my mom was they were kind of my mom was asking her, well, you're not showing that you miss Mark, which is my uncle. And she said, you'd have no idea how horrible it feels not even to have the tears to cry for your child when they've passed away.
hmm,
And so I'm not going to share what the message was, but he gave me a message for her. And I could just see in her face, it allowed her to release in her own way.
hmm,
She was looking for the tears, but they wouldn't come, but that message allowed her to express it in her own way. So
hmm,
it's been healing. And I've talking to other people, yourself included, I've observed that sometimes the relationships we don't have in the ways that we want to experience them with those that are here, are more meaningful from the next room.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
cool. It's cool to have the dimension of beings, those that are physically here with us that we can hug and break bread with and say, I love you. And then those that are just beyond the veil, right? And it's just the dimension of it all is just so beautiful. If you just sit for a second and you absorb how many people are here on this side that love and adore you and are cheering you on and want you to succeed, and then how many are in the next room that are cheering you on and want you to succeed. And if you really think about it, there's legions of beings that you know and many that you forgot about that want you to succeed and that love you and want you to do and be the best possible version of you while you're in the human form. And so that's my final thought is just open up to receive, because there's just soul families and light beings from all kinds of dimensions that are here that want us to do the best we can and try to expand our consciousness while we're here, to take these little pea brains and open them up and go, there's more to it. It's a much bigger situation than what we think about every single day. What am I going to have for dinner? That's there's some pretty cool things going on. So
Yeah. Well, I guess my final thought is to just say thank you. Thank you to you, Jane, for being so open. And, I just love you. And I said earlier that we shared a zodiac sign, and that sign is Pisces. And we're intentionally, the one thing we are kind of being in, well, we're being intentional, period. But the one thing we did do was choose a date at the beginning of Pisces season because we feel like there's such power in our sign. We're biased, of course. But I just want to say thank you to Michelle, because without Michelle and the connection to the beautiful Dying and Death Expo, I would have never met you. And like you said, Michelle is so selfless, so open, and so obedient. And I just thank her, Kiara, the team from Hop In, and everyone that's making this possible, not only for us, but for everyone here. And thank you to you all that have taken the last hour to listen to us talk and share, and just for being here.
Beautiful. I don't think I have anything to add. Thanks for taking a journey with us through the next room. And I will ditto the thanks to Michelle. She is a pure, kind heart. And she certainly has, just expanded so much to allow all of us to gather on this platform. So thanks so much to the Beautiful Dying Expo. And it's only day one. We have 2 more beautiful, fun-filled days. So we certainly hope to see you in and around the booths and in the sessions, in the main stage and the podcasts. And I just give so much thanks to you. And I love you too, Joelle. I am just thrilled that you and I are going to align in the new year.